Okay, whether you're a beginner or you've been doing this for a while, we're gonna talk about what the essential fly fishing pieces of gear are at a bare minimum. Not all the fancy stuff, but just to get started and get out on the water catching some fish. Stay tuned and we'll go over them all.
That's a big brown, bro!
Okay, again, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk about basically the essential fly fishing gear that you're gonna need to get out on the water and catch fish. There's a lot of things that you can get into, a lot of different types of rods, reels, and gear and all this stuff, and it can add up certainly over time. But if you just wanna get after this and get in there and start, these are gonna be the things. So first off, we're gonna talk about probably the most essential piece of gear, and that is gonna be a fly rod and a reel. A lot of times these, especially if you're going to kind of a beginner setup, the rod and the reel can come in kits. For instance, we have this Lamson kit right here, and it's a good one because it will come with a rod and a reel already set up. Now, depending on where you are and what you're gonna fish, the rod weight might be something that you're gonna kind of change and alter. That could change the price, could change what you're doing. We're not gonna get into all that right now. We do have some other videos where we'll list those below in terms of what you need to look for in selecting a rod and reel. But at a high level, you're gonna need a rod and a reel. If you want, we also have the rods, they come a la carte, and you can select a rod based on your budget. You can select a reel based on your budget as well. And then the line is the other piece of that kind of trio of things that you need. Again, this all can come as a kit. You can buy them a la carte. We'll list some options for you in the links below. But that's kind of your key component: rod, reel, and a line. Now let's move on to the next one. Okay, next on the list, you've got your fly rod, you've got your reel. To your reel, you have attached your fly line. Just for reference, this is a fly line. Fly line is a plastic coated, usually braided Dacron or monofilament in the middle, but most of them, at least to start out, are going to be made to float. Some sink. We're not going to get into that today, but the fly line is what propels the fly, and so that's a key component that we mentioned before. But to that, you'll need to attach a leader. You can't just tie your fly onto this thing. And so with leaders, they come typically packaged in either single packs or often 3-packs, and they are a either nylon or fluorocarbon monofilament fiber that attaches to your fly line, and they are tapered. So depending on the type of fishing that you're going to do, the size of the fish type and flat size of your flies, you will have a different thickness and style of leader. We're not going to go through all those here, but suffice it to say, to your fly line, you will attach a leader. And again, the leader's going to depend on what you're doing with them. Now, a leader is going to be, in this case, $7, $5 to $7 per each. So you typically don't want to burn through these very quickly. In order to do that, to kind of help save both the taper of the leader as well as its longevity, we have something called tippet that we will attach to it. So tippets will match a leader. So if you're fishing a leader with a certain diameter and thickness and type, you tend to want to match that to a tippet. So in this case, we have a Rio, and this is a 3X tippet. So if you're fishing a 3X leader, you could use a 3X tippet. You could even go down to a 4X. So the bigger the number on tippets, the smaller the diameter. You typically want to have a collection of these because you may want to go even further. So you could go from a 3X leader to a 3X tippet to a 4X tippet, even a 5X tippet. And that way you can kind of mix and match those. You typically don't want to go up or down a number in the leader to tippet combination, but I would tend to say have multiple types of tippets. We're not going to go into all the details of tippets, but suffice it to say you do need a leader, and it's a great idea, I would say vital, to have the tippet as well. Okay, after that, we're going to go on to the next thing you need. Okay, so after our tippet, we're working our way down the system. The final thing that you absolutely must have to catch a fish, unless they bite onto the end of your tippet with nothing incentivizing them, would be a fly. Now, we carry around 5,000 different fly sizes and colors. So that is a lot of flies. So in our fly bins here, we've got flies that imitate everything from mosquitoes to grasshoppers to frogs to leeches to mayflies, stoneflies, salmon flies, and everything in between. Depending on where you're going, depending on when you're going and how you're going to fish will dictate the types of flies. Now, I would recommend as you start out not to go hog wild and buy a bunch of different flies until you know where you're going and the time, so that you can select some flies that will be specific to your area. If you have trouble choosing, you know, either give us a ring, ask some comments below, but we also recommend talking to your local fly shops and local resources that will help you pick your flies as well. Flies are kind of key because that's the connection between you and the trout. If you want to make sure you're giving the fish what they think they are eating, it's important to match the flies to something the fish is at least is going to make them mad or make them eat. So flies are key. Again, don't start off with a bunch of them. Start off with as many as you need. And then after that, you are going to need something to put the flies in. So let's go check out some fly boxes. Okay, when it comes to fly boxes, let me give you one warning. And this, I think, is universally applied to everybody. When you start out, you might only need a little fly puck like this, or maybe something a little bit bigger, and you can just chuck those flies in there. The most important thing is you don't want them escaping. So how do you keep them from escaping? You put them in something. Now, you could just put these in an Altoids tin, or you could put them in really anything, but you want to keep them enclosed, and it's nice to keep them separated. So while these are good if you're fishing kind of the same types of flies, you tend to want to graduate to something like a fly box, which we have in spades. We have probably hundreds of different styles of fly boxes, but a fly box, typically what it will do is it's going to have a way for you to keep the flies categorically organized, or at least have a way, and these are made of foam, a lot of them are, where you can just back the flies into those little slots. It keeps the little parts and pieces of the flies protected, and then you simply shut it, and now you've got a very secure and tough, impact resistant container to hold your flies and protect them from the elements, to protect them from being crushed, and so that you can keep them organized and used. As you get more and more flies and kind of go fish different areas, different times of year, you will need to add more flies to your collection. And that's why fly boxes are nice, because you can choose some nice storage scenarios for your flies depending on the sizes and the types of flies. And then you can kind of go hog wild. And if you're like me, as I got into it, I really got into organizing and reorganizing my flies and swapping out boxes in and out. So at least start with something simple. Could be something as simple as one of these pucks, or graduate to a big fly box. Either way, kind of depending on your budget, you will need something to hold your flies in. Now, you've really got everything covered. Fly rod, reel, line, leader, tippet. Talked about flies, holding the flies. But now let's talk about where you can put all this stuff that you've accumulated, because it's no good to be out there on the water and just juggling around the stuff, not knowing where to put it, or hoping it fits in your pocket, because I guarantee you it won't take long before whatever you're carrying with you is going to exceed the capacity of your pockets or anything that you have. But let's find a better way to keep those at the ready when you're on the stream or the lake. Okay, now we've got all of our goodies. Again, bare essential goodies to help us catch fish. But even though you don't have to have a pack, and I think the rest of these things are not of the extreme essential. They're not going to help you catch a fish, but they certainly will help you get out there and be more comfortable on the water and manage your stuff and not lose stuff. So that is important. Ergo, it is essential. And we're talking about packs. So typically, if you go back to the 80s or the 70s or even the 50s, people would wear these fancy fly fishing vests that are typically brown, and they have a ton of pockets, and people fit all stuff in these nooks and crannies, and they can kind of get kind of bloated and big. Well, nowadays, while we do still see some people out there wearing vests, bless their souls, I definitely see more people using packs and other types of things that attach to their bodies that help them carry their fly fishing gear. So, and again, this runs the gamut, just like fly rods, reels, anything else that we're talking about here. There are so many choices that you can choose from. So again, I would go with what fits your budget, what fits your use case, and then start there. I will say, packs by and large are something that people will start with, and then they may migrate to different types for different situations and uses. For instance, if I'm just going out for a quick jaunt, something like this little chest pack, which just kind of hangs on my chest here, it might only fit 1 or 2 fly boxes and maybe a couple of snacks. It can be used as a chest pack. It can also be put on your belt. A lot of these can be worn either as chest packs or side packs, whether it's on a belt or wading belt. They have hip packs that are more go around your waist. We have sling packs that would sling over and kind of go behind you. You have full backpacks, and you have combos that include backpacks as well as chest packs. And you can even throw a hip pack on there as well if you want. So again, the sky's the limit on the types of things that you're looking for. With packs, I'd say there's two things to look at. Well, three. That's the style that I just mentioned. Some people don't like things hanging in front of them. Some people don't like stuff on their back. So the style of pack is important. The other thing would be the size, like the capacity. Do you have one fly box? Is it small? Is it big? Where is it going to fit? So, and you know, do you want to bring water along? So things like that will help kind of determine the pack that you want to get. And then, in addition to the capacity, do you want something that's waterproof or water resistant? Because a lot of times, one like this, I can totally submerge this in the water and it's not going to let anything in there get wet. So if you do need something waterproof, you live somewhere that's super rainy, or you're going to go take a spill in the lake or the river, figure out that something that is waterproof. And again, like I said, most of the time you're going to end up with more than one of these things. But if you're starting out, something simple like these little chest packs or hip packs, they're going to be great to start out. Okay, so now that we've got a spot to store everything, let's talk about some of the, I would still call them essential, but nice to have essentials. Moving on to the next one. Okay, unless you like going to the dentist, I would say it's not a good idea to nip the tag ends of your leader and tippet with your teeth. Certainly can do it. You could certainly use anything that you already have. You could use toenail clippers. But by and large, we recommend going with something that we call a nipper. And in the fly fishing world, I think everybody carries at least one or two nippers. But the ones that we tend to see are going to be something that's more designed for fly fishing specifically, or fly, fishing specifically, to clip the tag ends and the pieces of your leaders and tippets. Now these, like everything else we've talked about today, come in all shapes and sizes and prices. At a bare minimum, I would say, again, this isn't required. You could just use your teeth and that might make your dentist happy. But I would recommend starting off with something that you carry with your pack or on you in your pocket that can help you cut that leader and tippet. It is not fun being out on the water without some sort of nipper or cutting device. Now I said, you've got tons of these, and again, just depends on what you want to spend and how you want to do it. It is kind of one of those, you get what you pay for. So if we're going to spend a $5 on a little nipper, you might find over the course of a year or two that those blades will go dull. And most of those that are manufactured in that way are likely going to just be useless afterwards. There are some, such as these, that have the ability to swap the blades in and out. Some of the higher end ones too, you can modify or sharpen the blades themselves. If you were fancy, you could probably sharpen some of these, but I've not found that to be very useful or worth it. You're probably going to pay $12, $10, $12 to have it sharpened, and it's only worth $5. So nippers are very, very important. Let's next talk about forceps. Okay, so hemostats or forceps. Again, I would say not super essential, but I'd say these are nice to have. Whether you need to have something to help take the hook out of the fish's mouth, or manipulate a fly, or get something unstuck, these come in extreme handy. So again, this is something that's relatively small. They come in different, again, shapes, sizes, costs. They do come in kits, like in this case, you get the nippers and a little zinger thing with the forceps. And so that is one that most everybody, I would say universally, is going to have some sort of forcep or hemostat that's going to help you, again, get the flies out of the mouths or do anything else that you need these little type of pliers to help you get about your business. Okay, so now we've talked about those types of tools. We're going to move on to the next, again, we're calling it essential area, and that is going to be strike indicators and split shots. Okay, you might ask, what are strike indicators and what are split shots for? Well, again, these are not necessarily going to be essential unless you need them. And when you need them, you need them. So how do you know if you need them or not? You need to suspend flies so that they hang in the water at certain depth. You're going to need a strike indicator. Strike indicators come in all shapes and sizes as well. The best-selling ones that we have are these Oros indicators. What the idea of these is that you put them on your leader or your tippet above the fly. This thing will float and it will suspend your flies, your nymphs or emergers, beneath it, depending on, you just adjust the distance. So if there's fish hanging below the water at 4 feet, you may want this strike indicator on your leader / tippet 4 feet up from your fly. Anyway, very simple in terms of how it works. Now on the flip side, there are some times where you want the flies to get down and you may have an indicator, but a little additional split shot will help get that fly sunken a little quicker and a little deeper depending on what you're doing. There's a whole thing that you can do on split shot as far as strategies and techniques, but suffice it to say that it's always a good idea to have split shot. You never know when you're going to want to get those flies a little bit deeper in the water column. Okay, now again, I'm not saying that you have to have these in every instance, but when they are needed, you want to have them. Okay, so let's move on to the next item. Okay, when we talk to a lot of beginning fly fishers, one of the things that I think a lot of people underestimate the importance of, and that is polarized sunglasses, or worst case sunglasses in general, but our recommendation is polarized sunglasses. What does polarization do? Well, number one, it helps cut the glare of the sun off of the water so that you can see into the water a little bit so you can sight the fish. If you can't see the fish in some cases, it's a lot more difficult to know how to fish to them, where they're holding, and it is going to, if you have polarized sunglasses, it's going to increase your catch rate. So, as with everything in the fly fishing world, the pricing ranges quite a bit. You can find polarized glasses on Amazon for really cheap. They're typically going to be cheaply made. Or you can find ones that like these that are a glass lens, a very high clarity lens that cut different levels of light, very strong frames, and they're made specifically for fishing conditions. Again, price runs the gamut. I would always recommend, though, having a pair of sunglasses. Even if it's cloudy out, they will still help you see into the water better and see what you're doing. I would consider them essential. I never go out on the water without a pair of sunglasses. All right, assuming you've put all of this together, you've used your fancy sunglasses to catch a fish with the fly that you tied onto your tippet, that you put into your pack, that you had in a fly box that was connected to your leader, to your line, your rod, and your reel, and you've got all that stuff figured out. You've got a fish on the end of your line. How are you going to get it off the line and release it? Well, you're going to likely need a net. This is another one of those that I'd say is essential. I always have a net with me when I go out. And as with everything else we've talked about today, they come in a variety of price ranges. So depending on the size of fish that you're going after, also kind of depending on the reach that you need. This one's kind of a medium handle net. This is one I would fish in a bigger river or from a boat or maybe on shore where I want to net a fish from a little bit further away. Or you can have little longer handle, smaller handle or longer handled nets that will help you if you're on a bigger boat or in a situation where the water's really deep or you're far from the bank. Now, we don't recommend going out and buying every length handle net that there is. So again, given your situation, look at what type of net fits your situation the best and get that net, the best one that you can afford. But I would recommend that you have a net at least, because that's going to make it much easier and safer on the fish to net it quickly, handle it gently, take the hook out with your hemostats, and then send that fish on its way. Now, with all of that said, there's one other category that we'll talk about. I'd say it is very important, not required, and that's going to be waders and boots. All right, if you've watched any fly fishing videos or read any books, you've probably seen people wearing waders. Very simply, I think this is obvious, but waders help you to not get wet when you're in the water. They also help to keep you warm and insulated from the cold water. And so waders are going to be, again, variety of prices and types, but most importantly, you want something that's in your price range, that's durable enough and that fits you. So waders, you typically want to go with the sizing guide provided by the manufacturer, or you can ask your local fly shop. We'll have a list of waders below that you want. If you're just starting out, I don't recommend spending $1,000 on a pair of waders, but you can if you want. Now, if you do get waders, I would also bear in mind that these are not very comfortable in summer, even the breathable ones, which most are breathable. So if you're fishing in the summer, let's say in a small stream, probably not going to need waders. You will, however, need boots. In fact, if you wear waders, you are always going to need boots. Let's talk about boots. All right, boots are typically made to fit on the outside of your wader. So you put your leg and your feet into the wader pant, and those typically terminate in neoprene. Then that goes inside of the boot, and you put the boot like you just would any other boot. You tie it to whatever lanking you like. Now the boots are structured so that so I wouldn't say they're waterproof because that top is open, water's going to go in there, but they typically have features that allow the water to drain out. So you're not going to necessarily feel the water sloshing around in there too much. They're made to do that. But they also typically have good ankle support because if you're walking around in a river or a stream, you've got rocks and logs and different things that can be very slippery. Therefore, the boots will have a surface of the tread material that's going to help adhere to the rocks, adhere to the logs. Now, there are lots of types of treads. You can even put spikes in these things to give you some extra traction, but it is important to have boots. I would say boots always pair with waders, but you don't need waders if you want to wear the boots. You can actually just buy neoprene booties if it's the summer and it's really hot. You still want to have boots to help you not slip around so much, but you can wear like regular shorts, or you could wear lightweight outdoorsy kind of pants that will help at least keep you protected from sticks and that sort of thing, but still allow it to be cool. So waders, kind of in the cooler water, cooler temperatures and seasons, you'll always need boots with waders. If you want to go in the summer, al fresco, I'd still recommend getting a good pair of wading boot. Now, with that said, I'm going to throw in a little added bonus here of something that I always wear because I think it's very important, and that is a hat. So, if you are fishing, you're typically going to want to have some sort of head protection. Now, this is good to keep the sun out of your face in terms of getting sunscreen or sun damage or whatever, but most importantly, it can also help cut the glare. It can help you spot fish. So in addition to that protection factor, the hat can be a technical piece of gear that you need. Now, I know some people don't like hats, or they like different types of hats, so knock yourself out with whatever type of hat you want. As long as it keeps the sun out of your eyes, helps you see a little bit better, and keeps you protected, you're good to go. Anyway, at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff we've talked about, again, and I'll mention this probably 1,000 times in this video, there are budgets and types of stuff that for everything we've talked about. Especially if you're getting started, don't feel that you have to spend a lot of money to get out there and start catching fish. We recommend taking it slow, getting a good budget in mind, buying within that budget, and picking those essential pieces of gear for your success, getting out there, having fun, catching fish, hopefully. Now, with that said, we do support our website by selling stuff. So if you want to buy some of the stuff that we've talked about, we're going to drop the links below. Much appreciated if you at least subscribe, follow us on the other social media channels, visit our website at flyfishfood.com. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, or give us a ring, send us a text, whatever you want to do, but we will help you out. Anyway, get out there and get fishing.